People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the show. Children have the right to live, learn and grow without fear of violence, abuse, neglect, exploitation and discrimination. In Sri Lanka, what constitutes the child protection framework and landscape? Are our children truly protected? What are the loopholes in the system? Let's have this discussion. My guest tonight is Attorney at Law Milani Salpitikorala, founder Child Protection Force. Good evening and welcome to the show, Milani.
Good evening.
Milani, when we speak about the child protection framework, let's first discuss whether our child protection policies, the statutes, are they effective enough in Sri Lanka?
So Sri Lanka has a child protection policy, but the problem is that our policy is not law. So it's just a general policy that is available. Other than that, the legal framework, I would say it's not updated, but if the current legal framework, which is the one law that we have for the protection of children, is the Children and Young Persons Ordinance, right? So this law is from the 1930s and it was amended in the 70s. And recently there was an update that it is going to be amended, or rather repealed, and then a new law on child protection. But the problem comes down to always implementation. So we have very good penal laws for the protection, rather for criminal cases regarding children. We have the victim protection laws. We have a National Child Protection Authority Act, right? So all these laws are available, statutes are available, the legal framework is available. But when it comes down to implementation, from the beginning of the first responding to the end of whatever justice process takes, this is where there is I would say, a critical problem.
Milani, the resource allocation when it comes to child protection is also abysmal. Speak to us about it.
So I'm not going to speak on behalf of anyone because I'm not very great at my financial knowledge, but I do know, and through research we have found out, including the budget for this year, the program costs. So if we take the National Child Protection Authority, they have various things to do. If you look at their act, they have mandate over all of our children, right? And their mandate is to protect, right? And through one of the biggest things through protection is also through awareness, and they have to do various awareness, all that they can advise the state. But if you look at the capital expenditure for the National Child Protection Authority for this program costs, I would say it would come to less than 0.something% from the entire national budget. So when child protection is not priority for the state, and that would be ideally resource allocation, there is a huge problem. And if you go, I mean, it's very easy, it's common knowledge for all of us to go into a state authority to get something done, right? And you see that they don't have enough resources, right? So to take a child who is a survivor of crime from, let's say, from the police station to the hospital, right? They don't have transport. They don't have vehicles. And I have seen good officers who have paid their personal money for three-wheelers to take children to wherever they need to be taken to, right? I have seen officers break down, right? Them having actual meltdowns, just like all of us would, because there's so much of cases coming in, it's overwhelming. It takes, I mean, you know, if you've gone to a police station, you've sat in an inquiry, it takes a long time to finish an inquiry because these are family disputes, right? So family or with children, right? It takes a very long time off that officer's work. So the groundwork is massive, but the resource allocation is minimum. They would send you chits in 1/3 of an A4 sheet because they don't have it. And these are the things that they're also asking the civil society for. They don't have computers to type the statements, right? So everything is handwritten. not just the police, but everywhere. If you look at the child protection workers in Sri Lanka, the state workers, right, including also civil society, it is an extremely under-resourced sector. I suppose because it's not priority enough.
So Milani, we're talking about a situation where we just look up and wait while our children get abused and exploited and neglected. We have the laws, but they're not properly implemented. We don't have the proper framework or the resources. And then after everything's all said and done, we try and scramble to make things right. But by that time, we have a generation of abused children who are broken adults.
Absolutely. So this roots down to education. All of us, I mean, we are civil society. I will tell you the law enforcement, the NCPA, probation department. Everyone is drowning in protection work, as in so many cases coming in. So now let's protect the victim, right? So, and they're drowning. I am drowning. I can tell you that, right? And we're a tiny organization doing this work for children, but can you imagine what the rest of the resources are, and the WCIB officers of the police department? There is no officer well-being. So these are people who listen to the story again and again and again, who visit the crime scene, they see the children. Now we do this. And it's, I can tell you, me being in, I mean, the same situation, it is extremely traumatic for all of us, right? So being there, doing that, and then officers having meltdowns because they weren't able to see their own child for a week because they're working so much on these cases. And the biggest ask now we see is mental well-being for first responders. And so from there onwards, there is a huge issue, because if these are the people who are going to do this work, they have to be well. I mean, they have to be able to take on that extremely difficult traumatic information and to look at it and all that, right? So, yes, I mean, you do come to a loss of words because you really don't know what to do. And I would say myself and my team, we go on fighting each day because of little victories. So we would have one child who would come and say, "Thank you, miss, now I'm in new school, I'm happy," you know, and trying to get over. But these are the little victories. But again, this entire system or this structure is not rocket science, right? A lot of other countries are doing it.
Milani, can we also talk about some of the best practices internationally? How should child protection actually be better handled? Yeah.
So, I mean, all of us have heard CPS. In other countries, they called it Child Protection Services, right? So, similar mandate for the National Child Protection Authority, right? So, in those countries, the people working in CPS are specially trained. Right? So there is, it also happens in countries like Thailand. Okay, so I'm not saying just the major countries, but also little countries like, you know, like us, or, you know, small countries will have also similar practices which are really good. There is a similar organization in Thailand that does this, but they are connected with the Thai police. They're connected with the state organizations, as in they are collaborating legally.
Okay.
So that the child doesn't have to go to 10 places. So our usual procedure is, you complain, even if they come to a civil society first, the first thing that any of us can do is to go to the police.
Okay.
Right, the first thing. And that process, from that start to the case being filed in court, is again a long process. Right? The child would have to meet so many people to talk about what happened at least 20 to 25 times. So it's called secondary victimization, when you have to repeat and repeat and
Yeah.
repeat.
Yeah.
But in other countries, all of these people come to one place where the child is very comfortable.
So that is common sense, no, Milani.
That is not.
And that's not
rocket
done.
science. It is not done. Right. So we have had children who have come and told us, if I have to repeat it one more time, I'm going to die. So suicidal thoughts coming in, right? Because the secondary victimization is far more bigger than what actually happened also sometimes, because you have to keep going at it.
Yeah.
I've had one young girl who came recently who was molested in the bus. And she said, no, I just want to get over with it. Then we told her, I think maybe we can report it. We'll try to look for CCTV and find him. Then she said, really, with our system? So children are very aware. They know things now, thanks to the World Wide Web and all the devices, which also has, I'll talk about it later. But they're very much aware. They know things that are happening. And she said, no, I'm not going to go through 10 years of a legal process and keep remembering this over and over and over again. If you can you help me with psychological help?
Right. Our system is very shame-based.
Correct.
We shame the victim.
Correct.
And that's, I think, one of the hardest things to work through.
Correct.
Speak to us about how damaging this can be for an individual and also for us as a society.
It starts from home itself, from the family itself, unless you have really strong parents who are going to be with you and, completely be on your side. Because we have quite a lot of cases where they try to say that the child consented. Now, these are the things that come inside the courtroom, right? But you still have very strong parents, guardians who are going to go ahead with you. Then, and you get your psychological help, you're okay. Not okay, but it's somewhere better than where the other children who the shame comes from the family itself, right? And then it comes from school. Yesterday I spoke to a child who said, I was pregnant, I had to go to school and I was laughed at. I was raped by my uncle, right? So it starts from there, right? And then again from the neighbors and the village, and it's a common, I think, mindset of our people.
Societally, we are also in denial,
Correct.
Milani.
Yes.
We act holier than thou. We say we are very cultured, very literate, and nothing bad happens, which cannot be further away from the truth.
Absolutely. On the way here, I was thinking about this, and we like to talk. We like to have launch events. We like to do things big and celebrate. But what happens really on the ground, only these people who work on the ground will know. So that would be the youngest, say, WCIB police officer who goes to the scene of crime, right? It could be the probation officer who talks to the child every day. It could be the civil society organizations. But the people who are working on the ground know the real situation. And I would say it is at crisis level, child protection in Sri Lanka. So rooting down to education. Like I said, everyone is drowning in protection work. There is no resources, there is no time, there are no human resources for education awareness, right? And that, I believe, has to come from the education department, from the National Institute of Education, where child protection, not just child protection, I would say social emotional learning, right? Learning about your emotions, because when a child is more aware, a child is at a better place to protect themselves.
Of course.
Right? Even if the abuse is manipulated, right? If you are more aware, then you know. So bringing in social emotional learning, I would say all throughout, not just early childhood, but all throughout, and bringing in subjects like law, child protection. Okay? The rest of the world has evolved, and we are still reading and repeating it. That's all we're doing. So we need to get on the ground and get our children on the ground.
Yeah. We are in conversation with attorney at law Milani Salpitikorala. We go in for a break. We'll be right back.
The People's Platform. TV1. TV for life.
4 teams assigned to investigate the murder of the chief PHI. IGP assures that murderers will be apprehended soon. IGP was appointed after duly being approved by the Constitutional Council. Attorney General informs court. Opposition leader raises concerns over procedure followed by Constitutional Council to approve his appointment. Voices opposition against the Speaker. Cabinet approves setting up Children of Gaza Fund. Preparations to provide $1 million to the fund. What is happening in the Sea of Sri Lanka?
TV1. TV for life. The People's Platform.
Welcome back. Putting the child first is our topic of discussion tonight. I'm in conversation with attorney at law Milani Salpitikorala, founder Child Protection Force. Milani, I keep feeling like we're having the identical conversation year after year.
Exactly.
We meet every year.
Exactly.
And keep having identical conversations.
Recently I went somewhere and I said, listen, 10 years we have been screaming, singing the same song. Let's get some work done.
Exactly. I mean, I have to repeat my questions from 5 years ago because nothing has been done since.
Not much.
Comprehensive sexuality education. Kids don't know how their bodies work. We shame kids so much, even about their own bodies. Girl children are shamed. Boys learn about sex through pornography, which is extremely toxic.
Yes.
And we'll act like there is absolutely no requirement to have our children kept informed about sex on the basis that all of this is necessary after they get into marriages. How further away from the truth is that?
Exactly.
Take our statistics, the rapes, the abortions, the unwanted pregnancies that take place.
And the unreported number of cases that nobody reports.
Exactly, exactly. And the trauma that these poor kids are put in. How unfair. And why isn't the system protecting these children by making them, by equipping them with the knowledge that they need and with the resources?
And that is entirely on the state to include it into education. For example, a few years ago we had the Think Equal program, right? That was an early childhood education program. And there are a lot of children I know who went through the program. It was absolute beautiful social emotional learning for children with everything, child protection included, body safety included, right? Identifying your bodies, right? So everything was there. Emotions, identifying your emotions. But some sort of political propaganda just killed it. And they allocated resources into that. I know they printed the books and it just died. So there have been, I have once been told by a state officer who we have trained or spoken to, and they have said, you know, we are doing very good work now. This is what we have done in our village, and actually it was very good work with awareness and all that. But the moment the government changes, we have to kill this project. which is the truth.
Right.
So it depends on the whole government changing. This is why there should be a child protection policy.
There is a policy.
No, a policy that is law, a policy that is a priority policy right next to the national security policy, right? Where every person, including state authorities, everyone, is bound by this policy. So currently we have a policy, but it's not law. There is no necessity that you have to be bound by it, otherwise you're going to be punished. Or, so. But child protection is something that needs to be in every ministry. Every person needs to know about it, right? I mean, I saw a few private sector organizations that offer women to bring their children to work, and they have a little creche facility, right? So that you don't have to leave your child with somebody unsafe. You're going to perform poor at work, and there is a problem. So these type of things that don't need major amount of resources, you know.
How difficult is it for Sri Lanka to adopt a preventative approach when it comes to child abuse, child exploitation? What will it take? How much will it take? Whose initiative will it take for children to actually be protected?
So ideally, when a child comes into the system, then go through this whole protection system within the justice system, that has some major issues, which is delays and with evidence and all that. It's a lot. But you're talking about preventing. The only way is through education, to make children aware. More media time allocated on awareness on child protection rather than sensationalizing what one case that has happened, right? So media also takes it and runs with it, then we forget it, right?
Sure.
But I remember when we were small, there were these advertisements introducing the 4444 number, right? So since then, they're advertising, you look at it, you want to know what it is about. You have these conversations at home, right? Today I was talking to a parent and I told him, you need to have the conversation, right? His son was 7 years old. And I said, we need to talk to them. We need to talk to them. We need to talk to them how to protect their bodies, right? But when you empower them with this learning, which is part of the education system, then they're empowered enough. And that is all you need to be doing to prevent it. And also of course, with parents.
Yeah. So parents are ashamed themselves of their own body to talk about.
Correct. So it again comes down to, I suppose, conscious parenting. Okay, did I make a conscious decision to have this child? Then am I going to be that responsible parent? Every word you speak to them about, everything will go into their mind and it starts planting seeds, right? So it's very, it's very scary, the world today, I suppose. I would take my bicycle and go to the town those days, but would I let my children do it or my friends' children do it? No, I wouldn't, right? Because it is a little bit scarier now. And so are you going to be there for your child? Not just be there on the phone seated next to the child, but consciously. And 15 minutes before they go to bed, to have a proper conversation with the children. So it's not, I wouldn't say, it is definitely a larger part of it is the responsibilities with the state, but also with parents at home, right? Everything we talk about, even if we are on the phone, right? Because Sri Lanka is in financial crisis, right? Then you have a lot of other countries in various crisis situations. Cyber exploitation of children. It's a huge market, right? There's a lot of money inside that. And parents being unaware of this and let children use devices without any sort of supervision, right? So this is the beginning of an ultimate, I would say, cyber exploitation of a child. And due to this market of the money involved with these pictures, and sometimes it's just a simple picture of a child with a tongue out, which can be sold with the face and all that, right? And with the dark technologies and people having access to it, right? It is very scary. And the only way that we can, I suppose, prevent it is by making the child aware and the parent aware, the guardian, whoever is there. The schools need to create awareness. And of course, the education system, starting from the system.
My final question to you, Milani, what more must the state do?
Difficult question. There's a lot the state needs to do. And I would say if the state prioritizes child protection, it's not because it's what I do, right? I mean, if you look at developed countries, their child protection policies, in countries where they say they have the happiest children, right?
Yeah.
If you look at their policies, how they work and systems, I'm not saying that there is no crime there. There may be crime, but that whole getting it backlogged, and now, because we are thinking right now we have so many cases backlog, right? So the keeping our systems in play, right? All we need is a little bit of tweaking in the law. It's fine. But just getting our systems to run properly, smoothly, without corruption, because the power imbalance is always there with a victim and a perpetrator, right?
Yeah.
So if there is no corruption in those cases, that will be really helpful, right? So the state can do a lot. And I suppose starting with a very strict child protection policy and empowering the National Child Protection Authority to take control of it. And have, of course, an excellent monitoring system. There has to be somebody who monitors it properly.
Sure. Yeah, and the mental health aspect as
And
well.
mental health, sorry, that's also a major part of it. So every client who comes into us is referred to mental health because it is major. That is what you need initially.
Yeah.
And mental health resources for our officers as well.
All right. Milani Salpitikorala, thank you very much for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.
Education, an invaluable